The shadows of dust and silence. The church bell tolled once, then fell into a hush so thick even the horses outside stopped stamping. Dust slid in thin ribbons through the cracked windows, settling across the wooden pews where townsfolk sat stiff as fence posts. At the front, the girl's veil trembled. Her hands, no larger than sparrow wings, clutched the bouquet so tight stems split and dripped sap across her knuckles. Her eyes never rose from the floorboards. She stood small and pale beside Ezekiel Boone, whose shadow swallowed her whole. Ezekiel's cane struck once against the floor. The sound snapped through the silence like a rifle shot. He was broad, his beard gone white with age, his face carved by desert sun. His boots shone black as oil, polished by men who feared his temper more than starvation. The preacher's voice faltered. "Do you take this man?" The girl's breath caught, faint as the flutter of a dying bird. Ezekiel's hand clamped down on her arm. "Speak," he growled low, so only she could hear. A murmur rippled through the pews. No one dared rise. Mothers pressed their children's heads to their shoulders. Men stared at the floor, knuckles clenched on their hats. The preacher cleared his throat and pushed onward, words tumbling like stones. From the back of the church, saloon doors creaked. A draft swept in with the dust, curling around skirts and trousers. A figure leaned in the shadows, a woman, hat pulled low, her coat hanging loose against the shape of a holstered pistol no one yet noticed. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. The girl's voice cracked. "I do." It was no louder than the wings of a moth. Still, Ezekiel smiled, the smile of a wolf that had broken its prey. The preacher stumbled to the final blessing, his eyes darting toward Ezekiel as if begging permission to finish quickly. Outside, the bell gave another hollow clang. The sun bore down mercilessly, baking the town square until the boards groaned. The crowd spilled out, quiet, uneasy, like mourners leaving a grave. Ezekiel walked tall, dragging the girl beside him. His cane struck rhythm against the boards. Step, tap, step, tap, the rhythm of command. Behind them, the cloaked woman followed. Her steps made no sound on the dust. At the edge of the street, a boy no older than 10 whispered, "She's younger than my sister." His mother silenced him with a hand over his mouth. The girl stumbled, her slipper tearing on a loose plank. Ezekiel yanked her upright, growling, "Keep pace." Her veil slipped, and for the first time her eyes lifted. They weren't blank, as Ezekiel thought. They were brimming, wide, terrified, yet burning faintly, like an ember waiting for wind. The stranger in the shadows saw it. Her jaw set. Ezekiel's men gathered at the wagon, rifles across their backs, laughter heavy with cruelty. Old Boone's got himself a lamb, one jeered. Another spat in the dust. A lamb for slaughter. The girl's bouquet slipped from her fingers. It landed crushed in the dirt. She didn't stoop to pick it up. The wagon door slammed shut. Ezekiel's boots rang against the step as he hauled her inside. The horses jerked, wheels grinding against gravel. From the saloon porch, the cloaked woman watched until the wagon vanished in the dust. Then she turned and walked slow down the street. Her eyes were unreadable, her shoulders straight, carrying sorrow like a burden long carried and never laid down. The townsfolk whispered after she passed. Stranger, widow maybe, trouble, sure as hell. But no one stopped her. No one asked her name. Back inside the church, the bouquet lay trampled, petals ground into dust. A shaft of light fell through the cracked window, catching the red smear of sap still wet on the floor. And outside, the desert wind rose, carrying grit and silence through the canyons, as if the land itself had held its breath, waiting. The desert's whisper of justice. The whip cracked against the ranch hand's back, splitting flesh. He grunted, stumbled to his knees, but Ezekiel's voice cut sharper than the lash. On your feet. Boone men don't crawl. The sun beat down merciless, bronzing the yard. The girl stood on the porch, her dress pale against the dark wood. Her hands clutched the railing, knuckles white. Every strike of the whip echoed inside her chest. The man sagged forward, dirt swallowing his blood. Ezekiel's cane struck the ground beside him. Let that be a lesson to the rest. No one spoke. The men kept their hats pulled low, eyes fixed on the dust. The girl turned away, pressing her fist against her mouth. She stepped inside the house, its halls lined with mounted horns, faded portraits, and shadows thick as tar. The walls seemed to close around her, heavy with silence. Later, in her room, she traced the cracked glass of the mirror. Her reflection was pale, lips bitten raw. Behind her shoulder, the desert stretched endless through the window, shimmering beneath the heat. Somewhere out, there was freedom, but it felt as unreachable as the clouds. A soft knock. She froze. When she opened the door, a hand slipped through, weathered, strong. A scrap of cloth wrapped something small, a roll of bread, still warm. She gasped. No one in the house dared kindness. She looked down the corridor. Empty. Only silence. At the far end, through a narrow slit of glass, she caught the glimpse of a woman's coat disappearing into shadow. The stranger. Night fell heavy. Crickets rasped in the sagebrush. The girl slipped the bread beneath her pillow like treasure. She lay awake, listening to the house creak with the weight of Ezekiel's breathing down the hall. In the saloon, lamplight flickered across the stranger's face. She sat alone at the far table, her hat brim hiding her eyes. The barkeep poured whiskey into her glass without a word, as if sensing she wasn't here for company. A rancher leaned close to whisper, "That's the widow, ain't it? Clara Hensley. Lost her husband in the war. Some say she carried a rifle alongside the men." Another shook his head. "War stories. She's just another drifter." Yet when Clara's hand rested on her glass, the tendons shifted like coiled wire, and silence returned. At the bar, two men spoke loud, voices sour with fear. Boone raised the grazing tax again. "Can't pay, can't eat. He'll take my land same as the Carters." Clara's eyes lifted slightly. The lamplight caught the scar across her jaw, silver against her skin. She said nothing, but the barkeep noticed her listening. Morning brought more dust. Ezekiel rode through town with his men, rifles gleaming across saddles. The girl sat beside him in the wagon, veil drawn across her face. The townsfolk lined the street in silence, faces tight with pity, fear, or both. At the corner, Clara leaned against a post, coat drawn tight. Her gaze never left the girl. The wagon halted. Ezekiel barked orders, pointing at shopkeeper. "You'll pay double this month. The Boone brand protects you. Don't like it? Pack your family and walk." The shopkeeper's hand shook as he handed over coins. Ezekiel counted them slow, each clink of silver like nails into wood. The girl shifted, eyes darting toward Clara. Their gazes locked, a flicker quick as lightning. Clara tipped her hat once, barely, as if to say, "I see you." Ezekiel noticed. His eyes narrowed. That evening, the girl found another gift tucked beneath the porch rail. A small knife, blade worn but sharp. She pressed it against her palm, trembling, then hid it quickly before Ezekiel's shadow filled the door. "Why are you out here?" he demanded. "Air," she whispered. He grunted, cane striking the floor as he passed. The door slammed behind him. The girl pressed her back to the post, the knife hidden in her skirts, and let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The next day, Ezekiel's cruelty grew heavier. He had a farmer's wagon seized, his cattle driven off by his men. He laughed in the saloon as the farmer begged. No lawman lifted a hand. Clara sat in the corner, silent, sipping whiskey. But her hand tightened on the glass until it cracked. Outside, when the farmer staggered into the street, Clara slipped beside him. "Take the canyon road," she murmured. "He won't follow there." The farmer froze. "Why help?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were on the horizon, hard as flint. Night again. Coyotes howled across the ridge. The girl crept to her window. A figure stood by the corral, moonlight tracing the brim of her hat. Clara looked up, meeting her gaze. Slowly, she lifted her hand, not a wave but a promise. The girl pressed her forehead to the glass. For the first time since her wedding, a spark stirred inside her chest. By week's end, whispers spread like wildfire. They say Boone whipped a man half dead. They say the widow knows how to shoot. They say justice is coming, but no one dare name it aloud. Not in daylight. The girl moved like a ghost through the house. Each day heavier, each breath shorter. Yet at night, she touched the hidden knife, felt the weight of Clara's promise through the glass, and the ember inside her glowed brighter. Ezekiel sat in his chair, sipping brandy, cane across his knees. His eyes were always watching, always hunting. From shadows beyond the window, Clara watched too. And the desert wind whispered between them all, carrying grit, sorrow, and something sharper than either, the scent of justice not far away. The gathering storm. The fiddle screeched, boots thumped, and the town hall shook with the weight of the dance. Lamps swayed on their chains, spilling gold across the floor. Laughter rolled thick, but when Ezekiel Boone strode in, silence followed him like a funeral train. His cane struck the boards, thud-tap, thud-tap. Beside him, the girl walked stiff, veil pulled aside, her eyes hollow in the lamplight. "Dance," Ezekiel ordered. She hesitated. His grip tightened, bruising her wrist. He dragged her onto the floor, spinning her like a rag doll, while the fiddler faltered through broken notes. The crowd watched, stiff, afraid to blink. She stumbled. His hand clamped on her waist, holding her upright with a cruel smile. Then the crowd parted. Clara Hensley stepped forward, hat brim low, coat trailing dust. Her boots hit the boards with calm certainty. "That's enough," she said. Gasps cut through the hall. Ezekiel's laugh thundered. "Step aside, woman. This ain't your business." Clara's gaze didn't waver. "She's not yours to parade." The girl's lips parted in shock. The music died altogether. Ezekiel's smile twisted. He released the girl only to turn and backhand Clara across the face. The crack echoed louder than the fiddle had. The crowd froze. Clara didn't move. Her cheek burned crimson, but her eyes, cold, steady, unflinching, locked on his. For the first time, Ezekiel's laughter faltered. "You don't know who you're crossing," he hissed. Her voice carried low and even, cutting through the silence. "I know exactly." The hall held its breath. Then Clara reached for the girl's arm, guiding her gently away from Ezekiel's grasp. The girl's shoulders trembled, but she didn't resist. For the first time, she stood beside someone who did not fear him. Ezekiel's men shifted uneasily near the doorway. One spat, but his hand hovered near his pistol. Clara turned to the girl. "Come with me." Together they stepped out into the night. The crowd spilled after them, whispering, torn between terror and awe. By dawn, rumors were wildfire. They say the widow faced Boone and didn't flinch. They say she once rode with soldiers, carried rifles through the war. They say she's more dangerous than any man here. In the canyons beyond town, Clara walked beside the girl, guiding her steps over stone and brush. Coyotes yipped from the ridge, and shadows stretched long under the rising sun. "Hold it steady," Clara said, pressing a rifle into the girl's hands. The girl's arm shook. "I can't." "You can." Clara moved behind her, adjusting her grip. Breath slow. "Squeeze, don't pull." The girl lifted the rifle. The desert air stilled. She squeezed. The crack echoed off the walls of red rock. A tin can shattered on a boulder. The girl gasped, half in fear, half in wonder. Clara's hand steadied her shoulder. "Good." Again. Shot after shot rang out. The girl's fear bled into focus, her trembling into resolve. By dusk, her cheek was streaked with gunpowder, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Back in town, Ezekiel's rage boiled. His cane slammed against the saloon counter. "Find them. Drag them back. Burn this town if you must." His men nodded, but their eyes shifted, uneasy. None dared mention the widow's stare that had unsettled even him. That night, in the canyon, Clara built a small fire. The flames flickered against stone, casting their shadows long. "You're not afraid of him," the girl whispered. "I've seen worse," Clara answered. The girl studied her face, the scar across her jaw. "Who are you?" For a long moment, Clara said nothing. Then, "A woman who lost everything, and learned how to fight so no one else would." The girl's eyes glistened in the firelight. "Why help me?" Clara's gaze softened. "Because I see the fire in you." He thinks he owns you. He doesn't. The desert wind howled through the canyon like a hymn. Days passed. The girl's aim sharpened, her back straightened. She learned to load quick, to move silent through sagebrush, to listen to the language of the wind. But Ezekiel's reach grew darker. Smoke rose from the edge of town where his men torched a farmer's barn. Families gathered in the square, fears swelling into anger. One night, a boy slipped into the canyon camp, breathless. "Boone's put a price on your head, miss. Says he'll hang the town mayor if you're not handed over." Clara's jaw set. The fire popped sharp, sparks spiraling into the night. The girl clutched the rifle to her chest. "We can't let him." Clara looked at her, eyes heavy with memory, yet blazing with steel. "Then we make our stand." The canyon echoed with gunfire as Clara drilled her through the night. Stars wheeled overhead, cold and endless. The girl's shots found their mark again and again. By dawn, she lowered the rifle, sweat shining across her brow. "I'm ready." Clara studied her, then nodded once. "Tomorrow, it ends." Back in town, whispers rose into open talk. Farmers sharpened their tools. Ranchers oiled their rifles. Mothers prayed over children. The widows making her move. They'll face Boone at last. Lord help us all, it'll be blood. And when the sun bled into the horizon that evening, a hush fell across the land. The town square stood waiting, heavy with the weight of something greater than fear. The wind carried dust through the empty street, whispering of the storm to come. The legend in the dust. Dawn bled red across the horizon. The street lay empty, boards creaking in the wind, dust curling like smoke between shuttered windows. The church bell hung silent, waiting. Bootsteps broke the hush. Clara Hensley walked into the square, coat trailing, hat brim low. Beside her moved the girl, rifle clutched tight, veil gone, hair whipping in the wind. From the far end, Ezekiel Boone appeared with 10 riders. Hooves thundered, iron striking sparks. His cane rested across the saddle, eyes sharp with hate. "Bring me the widow," he bellowed, "and drag that girl home where she belongs." No one answered. The only sound was the moan of the wind. Clara stepped forward, her boots sinking into the dust. "This ends now." Ezekiel's laughter rattled the windows. "Ends? Woman, you're nothing." Her coat fell open. The gleam of steel caught the dawn. The crowd gasped from the shadows of porches. Not just a pistol, but a rifle, worn from war, resting in her hands with the weight of memory. A murmur spread. Widow Hensley, the angel of Antietam. They said she was a ghost story. "She's real." Ezekiel's jaw tightened. "Kill her." The riders dismounted, rifles rising. Clara's voice carried calm. "Now!" The girl lifted her rifle. Her hands were steady. Gunfire split the silence. The first rider dropped, chest burst with dust and blood. Clara moved like water, her shot sharp, measured, deadly. Each pull of the trigger struck true. The street became thunder. Horses screamed, men cursed. Clara advanced step by step, dust swirling at her boots. The girl fired beside her, each shot ringing with the sound of defiance. Ezekiel's men fell one by one, cries swallowed by the roar. The townsfolk watched wide-eyed, rooted to the shadows, as the widow carved through Boone's army with the patience of a storm. Then silence. Only 3 remained, Ezekiel and 2 shaking men too scared to fire. Clara's rifle barrel smoked. The girl reloaded with hands quick as breath. Ezekiel snarled. "Cowards!" He shot one where he stood. The other fled. Now only 2 remained. Clara lowered her rifle slowly. Her voice cut cold. "It's over." Ezekiel dismounted, cane striking earth. His pistol gleamed black as tar. "No, widow. It begins with your death." The girl stepped forward, but Clara held her back with one hand. Her eyes never left Ezekiel. The street narrowed to silence. Dust swirled. A dog barked once, far off. Ezekiel raised his pistol. Clara's hand hovered at her holster. But it wasn't Clara who moved. The girl stepped past her, lifting the rifle she had carried from the canyon. Her breath steadied. Her finger found the trigger. Ezekiel turned, surprise breaking his sneer. The crack echoed like judgment. His pistol clattered to the ground. His body staggered, then dropped heavy into the dust he once owned. The town square held its breath. The girl stood frozen, rifle smoking in her hands, chest heaving. Clara's hand closed over her shoulder, steady and strong. It's done. By noon, the townsfolk gathered. Ezekiel's body lay covered in a torn cloth. His men gone, his power broken. The girl stood on the steps of his mansion, no longer veiled, no longer trembling. She spoke few words, but each carried weight. The land he stole returns. The taxes end. We live free. Faces lifted, hope blooming where fear had lived. Clara watched from the edge of the crowd, hat brim low. She said nothing, only turned to walk away. The girl's voice stopped her. Stay. Clara paused. Dust swirled at her boots. I can't, she said softly. My place isn't here. The girl's eyes glistened. Then where? Clara's gaze drifted to the horizon, endless and red. Wherever justice is waiting. She tipped her hat, turned, and walked into the desert. The crowd parted silently, watching her fade into heat and dust until she was nothing but a memory against the sky. That night, as lanterns glowed in windows and children slept safe for the first time in years, the old storyteller's voice rose by the fire. They say a widow came through when no man dared. They say she carried sorrow like a blade and turned it against the cruel. They say a girl no older than spring itself found her fire in that widow's shadow, and with one shot ended the reign of tyrant. Some call it chance, some call it fate. But if you stand quiet in the desert wind, you'll still hear it. The crack of a rifle, the whisper of a widow's boots, and the legend born in dust.